Hi, good afternoon, good day. It's Leslie Esther's Red Wine. I'm so excited because we are doing a special version of our Talent Tuesday. This is what I'm calling the teen edition because we are focusing on going to college. And I am so delighted today. We have a very special guest with us to talk about how to finance your child's college education. And I should know this because I have two freshman girls who will be in the class of 2025 looking to go to college really soon. The reason this broadcast has come up is because I happen to be a member of the Oakland County chapter of Jack and Jill Incorporated. And our chapter is actually having this weekend, our teens are participating in a college rap session. And the mothers who are working on the committee, we thought we should do a little bit more to share information with the mothers in our chapter about how to fund college. So this is not only an LER Consultants production, but it really is inspired by my service and support of Jack and Jill, an organization that I love. Today, we are going to be talking to Gwen Thomas. Gwen is the author of this really important must have book called The Parent's Smart Guide to Sending Your Kids to College Without Going Broke. Gwen has worked with policymakers, businesses, colleges, association, and clergy, and internationally to discuss strategies to improve youth's educational opportunities in urban, rural, and suburban communities. Gwen prides herself on making significant life-changing opportunities for disadvantaged families to strengthen economic and social advancements for sustainable quality of life. Fresh Perspectives, the organization which Gwen founded, collaborates with domestic and international organizations, and Thomas's work is the manifestation of her passions to enlighten, educate, empower communities, eliminate debt, and create a world of equity and equality for all. I'm so delighted to talk to Gwen today. We've met, we have a lot of in common, and I'm just going to bring her in the studio so we can just begin our conversation to just really talk about this book. So I want to welcome Gwen into the studio with me.
Thank you, Leslie. I'm so excited to be with you today and share information to your students and parents.
Yes, we are so, there's so much information to share with parents about preparing for college. And the question is like, how early do you begin? I am a graduate of the University of Michigan. I'm wearing my Go Blue colors today, that maize and blue, because that was life-changing experience for me. I knew I needed to go to a four-year college and university because it was only going to be the game changer. And as an educator and someone who has worked tirelessly to send thousands of students to college in my work, I just know that even as a parent, I have to make sure that we share this message. And my hope is that so many people will tune in and listen and learn about this wonderful book that you've written, Gwen. And so, my first question for you today is, what inspired this book?
Well, like so many parents, when my son was preparing to go to college, there were so many things that I just didn't know about. I found myself a little behind the times, and I thought I was keeping up with everything regarding college, and I found myself, had so many questions and figuring this thing out. And I called myself preparing early, and I had planted a few seeds. Thank God I did that along the
Yeah.
way, just sharing with him, listen, when you go to college, you're going to have to get scholarships because the price of college is just getting expensive. And there were a few things that I did to put him involved in community programs just to strengthen him as a student. And I wanted him to be conscious of being engaged in his community and giving back. And so that was something I ingrained in him from an early age.
Nice.
But I wrote the book because all these things that I did not know, I said, there's probably other parents like me who don't know. And so when I was on the journey, I just started making notes and I created a plan of what I was going to do. And he was successful in receiving about $500,000 in direct
Wow.
scholarships that paid for his college education at Morehouse College undergrad, grad school at Johns Hopkins, and study abroad to 30 countries. So
Wow.
when people found this out and they were needing help as well, they said, well, Gwen, can you share with us, tips and things like that? And so I wrote the book based on a very good friend of mine who pushed me to come back. I had moved to DC, who pushed me to come back to Detroit and do a
Nice.
workshop. I had did a few workshops to help some families, but she at this last workshop that I came to back, she said, you should write the book. And then people in the audience says, yeah, when are you going to do the book? And I left Detroit with order for 200 books and I hadn't even written the book yet.
Oh my gosh, that's so wonderful. I know, reading the book, it sounds like you were in the Caribbean when you started
Yeah, yeah, I
working on this.
was.
Uh,
I,
uh,
I was in the Caribbean on a vacation, a well-deserved vacation.
yeah.
And I was in that transition period, just like so many people are now.
Hmm.
We were approaching the end of the 2009. That whole economic downturn lasted a few years. And
Yeah.
just like we were coming out of that, and people were like they're coming out of COVID. And I was trying to figure out what was I going to do to transition. And I had been so focused on my son and to make sure he got a college education. And God just spoke to me. My friend, I thank God I have a couple of good friends who look after me. And she insisted I go on this vacation. And I'm looking at her, I'm like, no, I don't think I can afford to go on a vacation. And she says, let's go. And
I
I
love it.
found peace.
I
And
love it.
that's when
And
God
that
spoke to
really,
me.
and finding that piece really brought forth
The
this
book.
resource guide that I am as a parent, I'm just so grateful to have. And so if you're tuning in now, you're listening to me talk to Gwen Thomas, the author of The Parent's Smart Guide to Sending Your Kids to College Without Going Broke. And so, Gwen, when you look at the data today, it tells us that the average college cost is about $35,000 per year. And for many families, that is an expense that, it's really hard to budget, particularly at a time like this. And, if you look further, the data tells us that over the course of college, when you think about loss of income due to being in college because you're not working, and the interest. If someone was to take out student loans, the number could balloon to as much as $400,000. So when we think of college cost, what is, what should a parent do?
Well, first thing parents should do, especially if there's if there's two parents, you've got to sit down with your mate and you've got to sit down with your child and begin to have a bold conversation.
Yes.
Sometimes it's hard to have these kinds of conversations about how much money do we have put away, how much can we afford to pay monthly if we should have to get a loan, how much do we have saved. That is a hard conversation because this is now time to open up the rainy day fund for your student. Now, I don't believe in debt, and that is the reason this whole thing started. And I began to share with parents that the time is now, and they will put it off and still think they can afford to pay for it out of their pocket, and they don't have it. Even our parents or families with six figures, and both parents may bring home six figures. Then take away the debt that you have, the cost of the house, the cars, and the debt that you pay monthly, and look at the real numbers. And I tell families, even if you do have it, you've got to raise a student that will be able to win scholarships, because that
Absolutely.
money, that extra money, you'll be able to save and put towards your retirement. And students will be able to utilize money to pay for their college and put money towards their own future.
I mean, I think it's pretty smart, right? Because it's almost like if there are scholarship dollars that are out there, why not go after the scholarship dollars to help fund college, and then use the income that you have to fund the life that you probably haven't been able to lead because you've been working so hard.
But
And
it's a
so,
hard conversation simply because people will say, well, we can afford it, I'll pay for it. And to me, it doesn't make good business sense because, they'll think the scholarships are only for students who are low income. And that's not
mhm,
the case. A grade point average is based on, the merit of this student. There's scholarships for all kinds of students, merit, low income, leadership. There's tons of different kinds of scholarships. So for the most part, we have to get people's mindset prepared for them to understand
mhm,
the process of winning scholarships, and that your student, if they're already the cream of the crop with a 3 point anything, you are wasting your money when the student has done the work.
absolutely. Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And so you talk about, parents who are well to do, and many people might say if you're kind of a Jack and Jill mom, that you don't need to pay for your kids. You don't need to look for scholarships. You can afford it. I'm here to say I'm a Jack and Jill mom, and funding college and thinking about college for two people at the same time is daunting. And I'm, extraordinarily thinking about, like, what are we going to do here?
You've got to think differently
Yes.
because
Who's your primary audience, Gwen? Like, who are the families that you work with? Tell me.
the majority of the families that I work with are families like that are educated families, the Jack and Jill families, the families who they can afford, if they can, it can be a little bit of a pinch for them, but they can sometimes afford it. And the
Mhm,
reason why I work with that population more so because they are beginning to understand
mm,
that if they have that extra money, your student might go to college and may come back and say, Mom, I've decided that I want to open up a business. And that's very prevalent now. Then
mhm,
you have some capital. You can gift your student with, okay, here's $100,000. Because remember, they have this idea they may not have access to capital. You
right.
are keeping that money in your family, and you have that nest egg to be able to fuel and that venture for your student. Or you might decide, oh, you know what, I'm not going to keep this corporate job. That money that I put aside for my son to go to college, instead of using that money, let's look at getting you some scholarships. And you're only using your money, Lesley, as an emergency.
Right. Well, that is awesome. And I just think, again, like, you've got to pick this book up because it's full of resources that's going to share with you all the different types of programs that are out there. But before we go there, I think one of the things that I loved hearing you talk about, Gwen, was just, like, how does a parent support their child through this process? Because I know when I ask my girls, when I'm, like, let's talk about college. No, mom, I don't want to talk about that, and it just is something that just creates a little bit of anxiety. And you talk about the need for being nurturing. And I think this is an important, conversation as we talk to mothers about kind of how can we support our teens at this time.
Well, it's important that you have not just, yourself and your husband, but it's important that you engage other friends who are in the field that your student is looking to go into. So they will have a mentor to talk to about what that journey to college and that pathway to success is going to look like. So you've got to begin to have a conversation about what that looks like, how much is going to, what kind of return you're going to get on that career. I truly believe in return on investment. Gone are the days that girls are going to college and come back with more debt than they started out with. So the challenge is women, Black women, have more debt that go to college than any of the demographics.
Tell
So
me
we've
about
got to
it.
talk about the field that they're going into. You've got to say, no, social work may sound wonderful. We know you want to help people, but you need to look at what is going to, if you are not married and you're a single woman taking care of yourself, you've got to be able to afford to take care of yourself. So if you go into a career and you expect to net $40,000 a year and you've just paid $100,000 for college, that's not good business. That's not a return on investment. So you've got to talk to them every step of the way, from
Yeah.
college preparedness to and academics, as well as financial, and what that looks like in the after part of college, meaning when you graduate, what is that going to look like? I'm paying for college. If you are splitting those loans, for example,
Hmm.
between the parent and the student, students have to know that they are going to tap out. They need to know what those numbers are. Parents may need to know that they may tap out. There's only a certain amount of money you can borrow that they're going to allow the student to borrow. Those
Yeah,
conversations, parents have no clue. I get all kinds of phone calls from students in their senior year who can't even graduate because
I
they
know.
tapped out of money.
Well,
We all know.
what's interesting is I talked about the average cost of college, but we know that, when you start looking at Ivy League colleges and very competitive colleges, the numbers can rise to as much as $75,000 a year. So when you say tapping out, I mean, there's just no way that you're going to be able to borrow that amount of money. Let me go back to something. I was just, as we're talking, I'm just, really channeling my own experience. And I remember very clearly. My mother, she was a single mom. I happened to be a pretty academically strong student. And I remember like going through the college process, and I remember having boxes of different college applications. And I remember when the acceptances came back, and I got accepted to all the colleges that I wanted to go to. And I remember I really wanted to go to Spelman College, for example. And, my mom, at the time, the cost and price of Spelman College was just not something that she could afford.
I
And I
understand.
remember, I remember that I had actually gotten a financial aid award letter, and, qualified probably for a very minimal amount of money. And so it was important, I think, at the time that I did get accepted to University of Michigan, and I actually had some 4-year scholarships as well, full paid scholarships. And I just remember not being able to go to the college I wanted to go to, but I ended up going somewhere that I'm glad I went to, but there was still a cost to it. What do you say to parents who are just confronted with something like that?
It's very difficult because most parents, they want their student to go to the student of their college of their choice, excuse me.
Hmm.
And I know that story because I wanted to go to Howard University so
Yeah.
bad, and so I was, very heartbroken. But I had come to the realization that my family could not afford to send me to Howard University. Um, so that's why it's so important to plan. And
Yeah.
it's so important that you understand this process of scholarships. Um, so what happens is you first find out what kind of scholarships that the college is going to offer. And then I task people to, if that is what the student wants to do, if you have enough time, that's why it's important to plan so you can get those outside scholarships. I gave my son a choice. If I had to pay, I said, listen, you're either going, if, I'm only going to contribute if you go to Michigan or Morehouse. I'm sorry. Those were my choices. And,
Hmm.
he selected, of course, those were his choices. And he ended up wanting to go to a HBCU, which we were challenged because they didn't offer any scholarships at the time. But I tell families, and I talk about this in my book, um, that's when you have to come up with a plan and figure out how I'm going to raise the money. So for me, because I was in the business of marketing and advertising, and I was always raising money for these major corporations, I decided to create my son as a brand. And
Yes.
so we were able to brand him, and that was one of the things that made him successful in winning scholarships. And so I tell families that's what you have to think about. How am I going to turn this student into a brand, and how are we going to help him get scholarships? So what do I mean by that? All of the things that they have done from ninth grade to 12th grade, you have to take that into consideration, and create their dossier and figure out what are their strong suits and how do we turn what they've done. And that's why I talk about what you can do in the book and how to take them there and every step of the way. And so that's what parents can do. They can.
Yeah, and I'm looking forward to inviting you to spend an afternoon with some mothers, so we can, walk through, how we work with our teens and help brand them. Because I do think that, each of them brings such a significant level of talent, and for them to be able to understand that, different colleges and universities are looking for their talents.
Absolutely.
And that's why, people use the term best fit colleges, because there's so many vast opportunities out there. There's so many different places that you can go, from large public institutions to small liberal arts schools or technical schools. And so I think that that's something really important to think about. One of the things, what are your thoughts, Gwen, about, we talk about going to college, and sometimes there's been a stigma around going to community college first before you go to four-year college. And I've heard recently through many families of their students who perhaps they might not have the grades to go to the college of their dreams, but the community college is a really good start for them. What are your thoughts about that?
Well, I think it's not just for those students anymore who don't have the grades. There are a lot of students, because of COVID especially. Some students are taking gap years. Some students are just really undecided. We have this emergence of entrepreneurs now. And so,
Okay.
where students would traditionally take the 4-year path, a lot of them are not going to college. But I tell families right now, get them enrolled in a community college for two reasons. If they have this idea about a tech, a product or service or some kind of technology, they're getting that orientation at a community college. It's a smaller college. It's less expensive. In some states, in some colleges, you are able to get that money, really paid for, depending on your income, through
Mhm.
grants. And so for most of the grants will pay for that community college tuition.
Yes,
Things
I
are
know. I
going
mean,
in
in some
expensive.
instances, we have a program even in Detroit called the Detroit Promise, which
Right.
actually funds community college for students for free. Which, if you can do a 2-year and get your associate's degree and transfer over, you've saved 2 years worth of college.
Tuition. And plus, you're able to get a $5,000 transfer scholarship to a 4-year institution. So the Promise Scholarship is offered to a lot of Detroit students. And then there's some Promise scholarships in the city of Pontiac as well. I know Jack and Jill is also in Oakland County.
Yes.
So, so there are tons of opportunities to utilize community college. In my opinion, the students that are going to high school should be graduating with an associate's degree
Mhm.
before they graduate, and be dually enrolled, and that saves lots of money and lots of time as well.
I know. I just want to plug at the moment that, as a member of the Oakland County chapter of Jack and Jill, we actually offer a scholarship to deserving students in the area. And we're able to give a modest amount of money, but it's everything, every dollar counts. I know that your son, Cameron, was able to get $500,000 worth of scholarships, but I think you have to really kind of go for the low hanging fruit out there that's really, easy to get. And I just want to say hats off to our members of our scholarship committee who do such a hard work vetting different candidates who come through looking for opportunities to really help fund them to college. I love, there's a lot that I think our students have to do to get to college, and one of them is standardized testing, Gwen. And there's the SAT and the ACT, which are benchmark assessments to help colleges understand a student's aptitude and their kind of readiness for the rigor of college. I'm wondering. I know some schools have now placed less emphasis
Yeah.
on taking these examinations, but as you talk to families, and then if you're talking to the audience listening in, what are your thoughts about preparation for these exams and how we should really think about them and categorize them in a way that is going to help the student's portfolio in college readiness?
Well, I really suggest my families taking the ACT and the SAT exams in middle school. You get them prepared early as possible. Some of our other minority groups, they take the test starting in the seventh grade, and you can take it for free up
Mm-hmm.
until the 10th grade. You can take it as many times as you like. And so they have to begin to master test taking and standardized test taking. I tell my families, please enroll in a program. There are tons of different programs across the city that allow students to do a prep course. It's
Yeah.
important. It's important because there are some scholarships, and when you look in terms of merit for our students that are above a 3.5 grade point average can be considered for merit scholarships. And so most of the merit scholarships still require that students take the standardized test. So I
And I
would,
remember I personally benefited from that.
yeah,
So I remember taking prep courses. I would go with my high school friends. We'd go to Oakland University campus, take the examinations, and ultimately, if you got a certain score, you would literally get tuition remission, or there was some incentive to be able to score well on those tests. But is the test everything, Gwen? I mean, what else are colleges looking at?
well, gone are the days that colleges are looking just for GPAs and standardized tests. They're looking for students who bring value. And so those students who bring value are those students who are giving back to the community. That essay question that
Yeah.
the colleges ask that you submit with your admission letter,
Yes.
it should say something about the student. It should tell the story about who they are and what their dreams are and what they're hoping to do. And so that's the picture that they have to paint in the essay questions as well as the scholarship questions. They want to see this student. I mean, these colleges want bragging rights. They
They
want
do.
bragging rights to say, this student has done well in high school. We know that they're going to succeed at our university.
Yes,
So,
that's good. Can I want to take this moment because we're right on topic, and some of our teens in our group five of our Oakland County Jack and Jill chapter, John, one of our students, he asked the question, what are some good essay topics?
well, I tell students to think in terms of what is happening in the world today. And one of the topics today is the Ukraine issue. That's a humanitarian issue. They're going to talk about questions like they're going to ask you to answer questions about political issues. They're going to ask you to talk about humanitarian issues. Well, with COVID, what did you do during COVID? What are you doing to make a difference in your community? I mean, they want to see, your strong suits. And so these are some of the questions aside from what it is that you want to do with your degree and why we should award you a scholarship.
Yes, I love that. Thank you so much. And John, I just want to say thank you for the question. That's so great to just really show your investment in your future education. One of our other teens asked the question about choosing, going to a predominantly white institution or PWI versus a historically Black college and university or a HBCU. What thoughts do you share with families? Jack and Jill, for example, we are predominantly African American organization, and so our students, have kind of the choices to think about, where they want to go to colleges and universities. And there's some really great HBCUs that are out there. But what do you suggest, Gwen? What do you think is the way that parents should think about that and navigate that conversation with their teens?
Well, I think it's important to have a great orientation to diversity. And so I talk about this because we have a lot of students whose families will, let's say, be educated in great suburban and
Yeah,
private schools. And then sometimes that student will be unaware of their own culture. And
yeah,
so it's so important that they have an even balance to understand their culture. So a lot of times when students, have had those advantages, that's when they may want to think about going to a, HBCU because they have the opportunity to, gain that further knowledge with that college experience at a historical Black college and university. And I tell families all the time, these organizations are going to the HBCUs and they're getting the cream of the crop.
yeah.
And
I've
sometimes,
seen it. I have, as a person who's had to recruit many people to come and work in my organization. In fact, started many years ago with a really dear friend, a teacher support program to just really try to get people interested in teaching programs. We started with the HBCUs, and we got some of the best talent, I think, out there. So I want to thank Alexa and Montana for your questions. Those are two teens in our Oakland County chapter. I want to thank them for the questions around, which school should they navigate. One of the things that we've seen, and this really goes back to really paying for college, but what I find sometimes is that students go to HBCU undergrad for just the very reason you talked about, is just, acculturating in what it's like to be in a predominantly African American community and getting kind of a cultural exposure and experience, particularly for students who live in suburban communities. And then, off they go to an Ivy League,
exactly.
looking at, HBCU grads who are doing really well to support some of their programs. I've seen the matriculation of a lot of students from Spelman to Harvard, or people who go from Hampton University or Howard University to Princeton to study in graduate school. So I love the concept of that, and I think it's something that I personally, as a parent, would love to consider for my own children. You talk a lot about pre-collegiate programs, and do you think that those are necessary, Gwen, for students who are putting together their portfolio and getting ready for college?
I do. It gives students a bird's eye view of what college is going to be like, and it takes them from, having someone to tell them when those essay questions are due and their homework is due to an independent situation where they're beginning to say, oh, I'm going to be on my own. This is how college is going to look. This is how it's going to feel. You have some students who have never been to a college campus
Yes,
until it's time for them to leave in that August to go to college. So I think it's important for them to kind of get their feet wet to figure
yes,
out, is this the field that I want to go into? University of Michigan, for us, they've always done an excellent job with pre-health programs and other STEM programs and engineering programs for
yes,
our young people that are in middle school and high school. And more colleges are coming into the area who are not, for example, in Michigan. For example, Johns Hopkins has been in the area now for about 10 years. And
Yes.
they, offer scholarships and opportunities for students to come to their campus in Baltimore and, be in a pre-health program. As a matter of fact, my son, for example, he was able to go away to Cambridge in the United Kingdom
Wow.
for a program, a pre-college program. So it's very important. It gives them a sense of maturity. When they come back, they now begin to understand what that journey is going to look like.
I just love that. And the more you're talking, the more I'm thinking about, I don't know if my mom was just someone who had a lot of foresight, but, when I was in high school, I spent summers at Michigan State University. I remember, just really being exposed to what is it like to sleep in a dorm? What is it like to eat in the
So important.
cafeteria? And doing that. And I also remember when I was in high school, I did the German American Partnership Program, and I studied abroad. And you talked about the fact that you've been working with 5 international, countries, and that study abroad is something that is just really important. What is it? What do you think we should be thinking about in terms of branding our students around thinking about study abroad?
Well, the one thing we have to think about is industry. And so, because we live in a global economy, all products are not manufactured here in the United States. And
Hmm.
so, when you think in terms of what your student is going into, let's say that they're going into automotive engineering, they may find themselves interested in that and may want to travel to work in Germany or
Yeah.
Switzerland or some other country. They may want to study medicine and they find themselves on a mission in Africa. So it's important to them to understand where, different research is done around the world regarding, medication and, manufacturing and things like that. Because, when students are getting ready to prepare themselves to be recruited from these companies, these companies are looking for students who want to study abroad, who want to work abroad.
Yeah.
They may be in, 2 years in Japan, and then, they're happy if this student knows the language already. And there's some programs now where, students are in a program where they will teach them the language, but they have to understand that this is a global economy.
Yes.
And for them to be competitive, they've got to be able to want to go abroad and study other languages and other economies.
I know. Gwen, you have just dropped so many just nuggets of wisdom. And I am, so grateful. I purchased this book a while ago. And so I've had it. It's been sitting on the shelf. I have taken it off the shelf. It sits right next to me when I'm thinking about how do I support my children preparing for college. And so I just want to thank you so much for bringing us, giving us an opportunity to get some insights. We are definitely looking forward to doing a follow-up session with you where we can get this book to our mothers and they have the opportunity to get the book directly from you, because there's so much in here that I believe that we must arm ourselves with as much information as we can that's going to help our students be successful. So do you have any final comments that you want to make before we
Yeah, I
wrap?
wanted to share with you. We also work with students. We do a workshop, a scholarship writing workshop. We
Lovely.
teach students how to create their narratives. They will create at least 2 narratives. So when they have different scholarships, they'll know how to apply. They'll know what to say and how to navigate through that process. So I'd love to work with you guys down the road on something like that for your high school seniors. And just be mindful, this book is available for students to use all the way through their PhD.
I,
We went back and edited the book, and we added about 5 years ago, we added information in there for students who are working on their PhD, because they came
right.
back and said, Gwen, I'm working on my PhD. You have scholarships. And so, and during the course of the year, we send out information. to our people who purchase our book on any updates on scholarship. So I'm happy to share any other information and meet with any of your parents.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, I can't tell you how grateful I am to have spent just this afternoon chatting with you about this topic. It's really been special to me. I want to thank you for joining me in the studio. I have a few words to say before we sign
Thank
off.
you for having me. I really enjoyed myself today.
All right. Thank you, Gwen. So now I'd like to, as we get ready to close out, this has been Talent Tuesday, the teen edition. We've been talking to Gwen Thomas about her wonderful book, Sending Your Kid to College Without Going Broke. It's an excellent resource. I would definitely check out her website, freshperspectives.net, and I believe you will be able to see how you can get more information. I love the idea of the writing workshops. Those will be really helpful. I want to, before we sign off today, I just want to acknowledge our wonderful Jack and Jill of Oakland County chapter. I would like to highlight our president, Chandra, and I'd like to also thank members of the committee, Terry Faison, Deshawn Draper, Paulina Johnson, and Joanne Pearson, who worked with me on our committee to share additional resources. I want to thank the teens who offered questions. And I really think that this video is something that I was excited to create to help share not this only this message with members of our chapter, with people and parents everywhere who are thinking about the question of how they're going to finance college. So thank you so much for joining today. We look forward to following up. Any questions that you have, feel free to reach out to us at LER Consultants and Advisors. This has been a wonderful opportunity, and I look forward to sharing more and bringing more resources out to the community. Thank you.